What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about everyone's favorite subject, and that is sequels and prequels, and specifically legacy sequels and prequels. And the reason why I'm discussing this topic today is because very soon, I believe September the 6th, the sequel to Beetlejuice is going to be released. I'm honestly kind of surprised, but also not really shocked that this movie's being made. The initial trailer did not sell me. It looks pretty bad from the trailer. I'm not super hyped to see it. And as much as I love Tim Burton's early work, and I really loved the Wednesday TV series, I feel like that was the most Burton has been Burton in a while. Like that, I loved the character writing on that show. I thought it was incredibly enjoyable, really appreciated it a lot. I don't have the highest hopes for this property. It just looks very fan servicey, and I feel like it's going to get in that direction. But it got me thinking about legacy sequels and prequels and even some requels, I know, all over the place. And so today I thought I would talk about some of my favorites because there have been a lot of really bad ones, but there also have been some really good ones. And so today I'm going to tell you about some of my favorite legacy sequels. Starting off, we're going to talk about Denis Villeneuve's Blade Runner 2049, a movie that I personally find far superior to the original Blade Runner film. And I know there are people that have opinions about that and that don't feel the same, but I find the original Blade Runner to be a really great set piece. There's beautiful set and production design. I love the music in that movie, but I find the thematic material of exploring replicants and like whether or not you can see replicants as human beings and the emotions that they have and the way that they're treated. We really kind of push that to the last 20 minutes of the movie. And most of the film doesn't attribute to that third act punch, where in 2049, I feel like the entire central focus of the movie is that thematic material, and Denis does not leave any stone unturned. It's very thoughtful, it's beautifully written. This movie is shot so gorgeously. It's some of my favorite modern cinematography. The music to the film is absolutely beautiful, and this thing's about 2.5, maybe pushing 2.5 hours, and I find every second of this film to be completely captivating. Gosling and Harrison Ford are both phenomenal in this. Ana de Armas is wonderful. Everyone that shows up in this movie just delivers the best of the best performance. And I will never forgive people for letting this movie fail because it is incredible. And I want to see more in this universe. I've heard that there's going to be a Blade Runner television show. I think it's on like Prime or something. And I hope that it's as entertaining as this is. Obviously, Villeneuve's not running that, but I love this universe and I love the ideas that these movies are trying to convey. And it's one of my favorite legacy sequels of all time. Up next is Toy Story 3. After the first two Toy Stories, we got a 10-year break in between. I'm sure a lot of people were skeptical as to whether or not Toy Story 3 would work, and this is one of my favorite films in the series. I think it is beautifully written. The story is just so emotional and authentic, and it's really crazy to think that a movie about talking toys can make you feel such intense, raw emotion. And in 2010, the way that they cleaned up the animation that already existed for these characters, it's just a beautiful looking movie. I rewatched it late last year and I loved it even more watching it again. I've seen it probably 5 or 6 times, and the more I rewatch Toy Story 3, I love it. I think Lotso is a great villain. I love the adventure elements. The comedy really is just perfect in that movie, and it was a perfect closer to that trilogy. And I know Toy Story 4 exists. I really like Toy Story 4. I know a lot of people are kind of like in the middle about it. I really enjoyed it. But if you would have capped the series at this movie, it would have been a perfect end. Up next, I'm going to kind of bucket two movies together, but Mad Max Fury Road and Furiosa. They're taking years and years off from the Mad Max property to do two sequels, Fury Road in 2015 and then Furiosa this year. These movies are phenomenal, and I love both of them, and I honestly think I like Furiosa a little bit more than Fury Road. But what I love so much about these movies is how lived in these worlds feel and how easy it is to immerse yourself in these stories. Fury Road is a much more bombastic action movie that kind of just drops you into this world and gives you just little bits and bits and pieces of information that you need to get you from point A to point B. Very simple story, but incredibly effective with the performances. Some of the greatest action set pieces that I've ever seen. I love the colors in this movie. It's just so vivid and beautiful. And it's a super fun experience. Furiosa is much more story driven. You get a lot more exposition about the world and how it operates. And I think that's what I like about Furiosa is you had an idea about this world, but in Furiosa you get so much more information about it. I love Anya Taylor-Joy's performance in Furiosa. I think it is brilliant. She is just such an incredible actress and she delivers such an amazing performance. Chris Hemsworth is phenomenal as the villain in the movie. I was really surprised. I didn't know how he was going to do, but he just really does a great job being like darkly comedic and violent and just really fascinating to watch. And both movies exist in their own world, but they are both so entertaining. And it's crazy to think between the huge gap in time between George Miller making those movies that they're such great quality and honestly are better than its predecessors. Up next, and this might be controversial, but Mike Flanagan's Doctor Sleep. Taking on the sequel to The Shining had to be a very daunting task, but I think Mike Flanagan succeeded. And I know a lot of people don't love this movie or they have middle of the road reactions, but the thing I love so much about Doctor Sleep is I think Doctor Sleep caters to both Stephen King fans and Stanley Kubrick fans. I think Mike Flanagan is able to incorporate everything that makes Stanley Kubrick a special director and everything that makes Stephen King a phenomenal author and pack it all into one movie. This has great character writing. It's dark, it's disturbing. It even has some funny moments. It pays homage to the original in a way that really works. I know a lot of people think that the third act gets a little bit too fan servicey, but I like what they do in the third act of this movie. It's a little bit over the top, but this movie and its premise is much more over the top than its predecessor, and so I can excuse it getting a little ridiculous superhero-y towards the end. To me, it's just an excellent exercise in how to create a sequel that pays homage to its original, but does its own thing. So much of this movie is so unique and different than the original. It has Mike Flanagan's signature cinematography style, color palette, but it also has that really great emotional character writing, which is what I love so much about Mike as a filmmaker. And I really love this movie and I always look forward to revisiting. Up next, and we're going to jump into prequel territory, but that is this year's The First Omen. After the original Omen trilogy, I think there's 3, maybe 4 films in the original Omen series. It had been a while since there was an Omen movie, and to hear that there was going to be a prequel, my eyes kind of rolled when I saw the first trailer, like, okay, what are you going to be able to do with this material? But this film is so wholly and uniquely original. Aside from the third act that ties it into the original film, it lives on its own. It's beautifully shot. It has incredible performances, builds tension and suspense in such a fantastic way that keeps you as the viewer on the edge of your seat. It pays homage to a lot of really fantastic horror films. The lead performance in this is one of my favorites all year. It's a must watch for horror lovers, and it's really surprising that, in my opinion, this movie is better than the original Omen. Up next, I'm going to bucket 2 movies together, but Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead remake and Evil Dead Rise that came out last year. I think those 2 movies being sequels to a such beloved franchise that was in the hands of someone like Sam Raimi, Evil Dead being Fede Alvarez's remake, reboot, rehash, whatever you want to call it, all these years later, being so effective in that it is truly scary, it is unrelentingly brutal, and what it does is it takes the very simple concept of the original Evil Dead and turns it into an allegory for drug addiction and overcoming drug addiction. And I think all the performances here are fantastic, and I really feel like if Sam Raimi had access to the technology and a budget that these modern day filmmakers do, this type of really intense horror is exactly what he was going for with the original. And the original Evil Dead still scares me and makes me uncomfortable. But this Evil Dead, it is just like the goriest, most bloody, disgusting, horrific movie you could watch. And every time I revisit it, I grow to love it more. And then Evil Dead Rise, I loved the switch in environment. I think making the main Deadite the mother of this family makes the horror so much more visceral because it's like your mom trying to kill you. And there's something so horrific about that. And I think the way it plays with family dynamic, it's just really sick and twisted and demented. in the best way possible. And I think both of these movies existing so far out from Army of Darkness and the original Evil Dead trilogy, it's incredible that, like I said, the quality holds up and they're just such fantastic films. And I would recommend them to anyone who are fans of horror. And then last up, this might be a cheat because it's not a movie, but David Lynch's Twin Peaks The Return. After waiting years and years and years for more Twin Peaks material, to come back with something not only that is a love letter to the original series, but is so wholly and uniquely David Lynch, is something that I love more than anything. This is my favorite thing that's on this list, and for very good reason. Each episode of this series feels like its own movie. The character writing is phenomenal. I love that David Lynch is kind of like, hey, people have their favorite characters and things about Twin Peaks, but I don't really give a shit. I'm going to do something entirely different that kind of ignores all that for most of the series, but packs a really heavy emotional punch. There's an episode of this show that's just a master class in filmmaking. It is avant-garde and surreal. It is one of the best episodes of television ever created. I loved the ending of this series because in typical David Lynch fashion, he says, screw you, I'm going to leave it open-ended, which I think is fantastic. It's what makes me love him so much as a creator. And this is just such a passion project in every sense of the word. I love Twin Peaks. It's my favorite television series of all time. And I feel like this is such a great addition to the original series and Fire Walk with Me. So, what are some of your favorite legacy sequels, requels, reboots? Let me know in the comments. These are just some of my favorites. There have been a lot of trash over the years, but there is some really fantastic ones out there. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.